best and worst cabin locations on a cruise ship? I get this question a lot because you don't want to be in a bad place, and I totally understand why. So today, I want to share the 5 best and worst places to have your cabin on a cruise and what to look for when you're picking out the right cabin location. Hey everyone, it's Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. If you're like me, when you're planning a cruise or really any kind of trip out there, you just don't want to make a common mistake. You want to avoid the pitfalls that are easily avoidable and minimize the risks that are involved with your trip. And picking your cabin location is a lot like picking a good restaurant. You want to make sure you're going to the right ones and avoiding the bad ones. And here we got some really good cabin locations and some not so great ones, so I wanted to share all of them with you here. All right, let's begin with the worst possible places to book a cabin on a Royal Caribbean cruise ship. Number 1, cabins at the very front of the ship. The very front of the ship seems like you might want to have a room there because it's kind of like thinking about your car. Sitting in the front seat is kind of cool. The problem with being at the very front of the ship is it takes the brunt of the motion of the ocean. As your cruise ship moves through the ocean, it, of course, is going to hit some waves along the way. It's very rare that conditions are totally calm, as in almost like a lake. There's at least some level of waves. Mostly, it's not too bad, but it can get bad if there's, a storm or front or the wind is just kicking up. Anyway, the point is that cabins at the very front of the ship tend to feel the sensation of movement far worse than any other place on the ship. It's amazing how many times I've been on the very front and then gone somewhere else on the ship and realized, wow, it's a lot less motion here than it was back at the front. Now, the front of the ship is nice because some of those cabins, especially right up the front, do have a little more extra space. But if you're brand new to cruising, I would not recommend them. If you're sensitive to motion sickness, I definitely wouldn't recommend them. And the other issue of being at the very front is that you're also very far from the elevator bank, which I don't particularly love from a convenient factor. So number 1 is avoid cabins at the very front of the ship. Number 2 are to avoid cabins right below the pool deck. So this is a common mistake among first-time cruisers. They look at the various cabins that are available, they pick one out, and they think they're all good, except for the fact they didn't realize they booked a room right underneath the pool deck. The problem with being one deck below the pool deck is the amount of noise bleed that is there. Basically, there's a lot of noise that occurs at the pool deck throughout the day and early hours of the morning. Basically, crew members are moving things around there all the time, specifically dragging chairs around. What they do every day is they set up chairs in the morning and then stack them at night, basically so that they don't fly away or just, run into somebody in the middle of the night. The idea here is that they assemble them and reassemble them and put them away as the day progresses. However, they do this at 5 o'clock in the morning and then late at night. And the problem is that screeching that the chairs make as they're being literally dragged against the floor comes right into your cabin. And it can really be a problem if you want to sleep. It's definitely more of a problem in the early morning hours and I think the late night hours. So basically it's going to wake you up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I'm going to go on a limb here and say that's probably going to be a problem. So definitely don't do that. Instead, you always want to book a cabin, at least one deck above and below other cabins, not public areas. Number 3 are obstructed view cabins. I really think that this particular issue, the obstructed view cabins, are one of the top complaints I get at RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. When you see obstructed view cabin, it means that some aspect of your view, the vantage point you have from your cabin, is, obstructed. Basically, there's something blocking it. Now, it can be very minor. In some cases, you go out to the balcony and you look down and there's a lifeboat below you, thus blocking your ability to look straight down to the ocean. That's technically an obstructed view cabin. Others are literally like a huge lifeboat right in the way. 99% of the time, it is a lifeboat that's obstructing the view. Occasionally, there's some equipment or a ladder or something. But anyway, for most cases, we're talking about a lifeboat in the way. The problem is people don't realize the nature of it, and they either don't think it's as big of a deal as it is, or they simply don't even realize they're booking an obstructed view cabin. They get in their cabin, and then it's like, oh, that perfect view they were expecting is totally blocked. And whether you're in the Caribbean, Alaska, or Europe, you're going to want to look out occasionally, and that could be an issue. Now, the advantage of an obstructed view cabin is it's going to be a lot cheaper. You can usually get a much better deal on it. Now, for some people, they might say, listen, I just want to be out on my balcony, enjoy the breeze, have natural light. That's all I care about. I'll be reading my book anyway. I'm not even looking out there. So you're good. But if it's really important to you to be able to see and enjoy the scenery and the views and whatever else is out there, well, an obstructed view cabin would be problematic. So what you want to do instead is book a non-obstructed view cabin, a regular cabin. And all cabins, by the way, have on the listing when you book it, the percentage that it's obstructed. Most are 0 because it's unobstructed, but occasionally you might have 10 or 20 or 50%. When you're looking at obstructed view cabins, you could certainly Google the room number and the ship name. Sometimes there are photos, even YouTube videos with it. But Generally speaking, if you book an obstructed view cabin, you should be prepared to basically not be able to enjoy your view at all. Because if you don't go into it with that expectation, you're going to be disappointed. And the last kind of worst cabin out there is something that could land you an obstructed view cabin anyway, and that's a guarantee cabin. Man, if you're booking a guarantee cabin, you better be going into this with the full realization that you're getting an unsold cabin, and there's a reason why it's unsold. I think some people assume that guarantee cabins are unsold because, there's just not enough demand for it. There's plenty of demand for cruises these days. The reason why guarantee cabins are there is to fill in unsold cabins that just haven't gone yet. And Royal Caribbean uses this as a tool to fill up their cruise ships. It's cool. You actually get to save a lot of money by booking a guarantee. The problem is you have no say in where your room is located. You might get a connecting cabin in which there's a connecting door between you and the other cabin. And that door, by the way, is extremely noisy. You might get a obstructed view cabin, which we talked about. You might get a cabin underneath the pool deck, which we talked about. Basically, there's a good chance you're going to end up with a room that's maybe not in a perfect location, or at worst, a really bad location. In my experience, every single time I've done a guarantee cabin, I think I've always ended up with a connecting door situation where it's a connecting room and I don't know the person on the other side. Luckily, it hasn't been too bad with noise bleed through there. But that connecting door is not very soundproof at all. So that can be an issue if you have somebody who's very loud in the next door room. If you want to book a guarantee cabin because you want to save some money, great. You just got to be totally okay with getting a not so great cabin location. All right. Now, let us talk about those great cabin locations. Talk about the best locations for a cabin on your cruise ship. Number one, Hump balcony cabins. I know it's kind of funny to think about the name of it, but basically, if you imagine the superstructure of a cruise ship, you look at the deck plan, you will see on most ships, towards the middle, there's a section that jets out on both sides. This is the hump, so to speak. And what it refers to as balconies in this area usually have way more space. This is especially true on older cruise ships like the Radiance and the Voyager and the Freedom class ships, where it's just a standard balcony room. But because the superstructure of the ship jets outwards, you get a much bigger balcony space. In some cases, it's even bigger than some suite balconies. It's really impressive. Now, these are very much cabins that go very quickly, but if you have the chance to book one, all you really have to do is kind of eyeball it when you're looking at the deck plans, and you'll see that balcony looks way bigger than the standard one, and you should definitely go for it. Number two are probably the type of cabins that most people look for initially, and that is a midship cabin. When you talk to any expert out there and they say, what cabin should I get? They'll tell you want to get a midship cabin. Midship rooms are conveniently located. They're near the elevators. They're also not going to be all the way forward or all the way aft, which means they have less sensitivity to motion. As, of course, we talked about, there's more of a sensation of movement if you're all the way forward or all the way aft. So being midship is definitely the most desirable location altogether on any cruise ship. And that's the reason why it is one of the best locations. It's convenient. There's less motion there. And for those reasons, it gets booked up quite quickly. Also, lower deck cabins kind of play into the midship cabin category we talked about. So when you talk to one of those cruise ship experts I mentioned and say, hey, where should I book my room? They're going to tell you midship low deck. Now, some cases, midship low deck is going to be an inside cabin, which may not be what they recommend. But for the least amount of motion possible, you always want to be on the lowest deck possible, midship. That's the least area of motion on any cruise ship. It's the most stable area, and that's why I'm putting it over here. I'm not sure necessarily you want to be on deck 2. There's nothing wrong with deck 2 or deck 3. The good thing about deck 2 or deck 3 is, hey, it's pretty easy to get to the dining room and also on and off the ship in ports. But the problem with being on a very low deck is you're really going to be a slave to the elevators, especially if you want to go up to the top decks. But I would say in general, it's usually more desirable to have a lower deck than maybe even a very high deck. Again, we're talking about motion primarily. And lastly, if you're looking for the best location for views, I've got 2 choices for you. One is going to be the aft of the cruise ship. Certainly, when you talk to Royal Caribbean veterans, they always talk about booking a balcony on the back of the ship. Aft balconies, as they call it. And these are rooms that face the back, not towards the side, but literally face the back. So they have to be cabins all the way at the very end. And the views there are truly incredible because you're looking at the back of the ship. Most importantly, you tend to get much bigger balconies out there because, once again, the superstructure of the ship is kind of slopes downwards, and that creates a bigger balcony space. So for a lot of folks, you get a standard balcony, pay less money than for a suite, but still get a really large outdoor space, and the views are fantastic. The Radiance class ships especially are notorious, or no, that's negative. What's the opposite of notorious? Famous for these type of cabins because of the balcony space on there, and they're highly desirable
So if you're looking for views only, this is definitely where I would go. Now, if you're on a big new ship, how about on the Oasis class ships, the Aqua Theater suites? I've been lucky enough to stay in the 2-bedroom Aqua Theaters, and I got to tell you, while the walk back and forth the elevators is not fun, the views you have from these rooms, whether it's to the boardwalk, to the Aqua Theater, or the ocean, are truly incredible. Not to mention the fact you also have the services of the Royal Genie, but we're not talking about that today. We're talking about purely the aesthetics of the cabin. And it's a beautiful space, great views out there. I got to tell you, being all the way on the very back is really nice. Now, again, it's got to be at the very back, not near the back, the very back. If you book a cabin that's 1 or 2 cabins off the very back, you just have a very inconvenient location for a room.
Well, there you have it, the places I would and wouldn't recommend booking a cruise cabin. Hopefully this will help you get the right room for you on and pretty much any Royal Caribbean cruise. I hope that helps out. Let me know in the comments below, by the way. Are there any that should have been on this list, and were there any surprises from the ones that I have on here? While you're down below our video, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so that way YouTube lets you know of a brand new video to share. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and we'll talk again real soon.